Welcome, everybody, to episode 2 of Agile Table Topics. We are very excited to have you here. I have two amazing guests with us today, and let me introduce them real quick. So first, CP Richardson it's funny, he lives down the street from me, and this is our first time seeing each other. We were talking about that earlier. We're actually going to hang out after this, but...
Are we?
Yes, we definitely will. And CP, I'll give a sentence or two about you, and I want you to continue introducing yourself. But you started out as a software developer, worked your way through program management. You want to ensure that people are always successful in the things that they do. But please tell the folks more about yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So firstly, my name is CP Richardson. As Omar said, I currently work at ArcXP, which is a cloud-native digital experience platform that helps enterprise companies and brands, media organizations create and distribute content, digital commerce, and deliver powerful multi-channel experiences. I had to make sure I get that plug in for my company because we're really awesome what we do. Outside of that, I'm also an Agile coach lead for ArcXP. In addition to that, I am actually a co-founder of Agile in Color, which is an organization that's focused on Black Agilists within the communities to make sure they give them coaching and mentorship opportunities. Also be able to provide them a stage to be able to speak and share their stories and help them if they're interested in creating talks or to be able to put together anything that they want to within a community, especially when we're looking for thought leaders that look like myself and Omar. We are giving them that opportunity, giving them that stage to be able to do that. So it's a little bit about myself. Also, a little fun fact about myself that Omar didn't plug, but I'll plug myself anyway. I used to be a firefighter for 4 whole years before doing this Apple thing. So yeah, that's about me.
Awesome. Thank you. And also, our other guest today is Chris Lee. I met Chris, I think I met you, like 5, 7, 6 years ago at a conference. And I remember watching one of your sessions and I was so like, who is this man? He has so much energy. I love it. So please tell the folks a little bit more about yourself.
Well, folks, if you're watching and you're tuning in, thank you for taking a moment to hang on and listen to this crew talk. Yeah, Omar and we met, it was years ago. I can't even remember when, but it was a good time. My name's Chris Lee. I'm from Sparkplug Agility. A lot of cool stuff happening on our end. We get hired quite a bit for speaking engagements, activities, podcasts, stuff like this. I act as a professional coach quite a bit. Our clients call us saying, hey, how can we unlock things? Look to that inspired future. Love doing that kind of real human work. Consulting is right in the wheelhouse too, offering some advice, but the phone rings the most for training. I'm one of those lucky people that to go all over the world. And well, in the before times, now it's working here in the studio. Occasionally go back in the room, but training is a lot of what folks call for. So if there's anything that you wanted to get to know me, pretty easy to find out on social, out on LinkedIn, out on Twitter, all that good stuff. So love to meet new people and reconnect with old friends.
All right, perfect. I am so excited. I've been wanting to talk to both of you for so long, and we're excited to get this going. So let's get going. So folks at home, just to reiterate how this works, we have our bowl here, our bowl of Agile Table Topics. These are curated from LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. I asked the question, what do you want to know about agility, transformation, business process, program management, project management? I take those questions and dump them in the bowl. And what we do is we rifle through the bowl, pull out a question, and we read about it. So that's how we do it. So before I get ready to go, click like and subscribe below, and we'll get things going. All right.
Smash that subscribe.
Ooh, our first question. This is a good one. What is the most challenging aspect of introducing and integrating new methodologies to an organizational culture? Ooh, I'll repeat it one more time. What is the most challenging aspect of introducing and integrating new methodologies to an organizational culture? Let you marinate on that for a bit. I have a couple things that already come to mind, but I'm going to give it to my two guests first before I throw my 2 cents in there.
Chris, you want to take that one, jump in first? Because I feel like you have all the thoughts, and I'll add some color there.
I have thoughts on any of them, but any new approach bringing into an organization, there's never like a number one always with it. But I would say that a big thing to consider would be whatever you're trying to bring in, taking into account kind of the raw material you have and how the organization is used to working from a values, principles, and like how you make decisions, how you behave. If you're trying to bring something in that doesn't exactly jive with how you do business right now, it's not going to feel too good. It's like, hey, you know what? We don't really eat that kind of food, and hey, the new recipes have all this new kind of food that people have allergies to or don't really like, etc. So I think zooming pretty far out, whatever you're trying to do, new, old, or otherwise, looking for that clash, that dissonance between, hey, what's important to us, how we make decisions, how we behave. If whatever you're bringing in is contradictory to that, not so much complementary, that would be a big challenge to keep an eye out for.
Kind of like adding on to that, one of the things, and Chris, honestly, I've learned this a lot from you too, and that is like there are people on the other end that are going to be impacted by this, right? So regardless if it's a new methodology or a new approach to whatever you're doing, whether it's just like, hey, I just instead of clicking this button, I want you to click this button going through your workflow. Always keep in mind that there are people on the other end who are going to be sometimes maybe a little bit tense to it. They may naturally embrace it, but always remember that whatever the new change, whatever the new methodology, whatever it is, keep in mind that there are folks who are going to be a little bit, hesitant about it. If you're meeting that need and actually just addressing that emotional concern that folks have, they'll be a little bit more receptive to what's happening. Granted, there's still going to be some strife. That's just going to exist naturally anyway. But if you're meeting and say, hey, I understand that this is new and this is different, and you're genuine with it, I think people would be a little bit, not even a little bit, a lot more receptive to what you have, shaping up. Again, as long as you're addressing that emotional concern on the upfront part of it.
And to yes and both of you to that question is change is hard. Sometimes change sucks and it's hard. And some people, depending on what agency or organization you go to, sometimes they have change fatigue. So that's something you need to consider is, has something been tried before and failed? You need to understand what happened and not make those same steps, but also being transparent and open and saying, hey, we know this change is coming. This may be rough. Maybe we'll start in one small pocket of the organization and grow from there. Because you never want to just change everything all at once for everybody, because that will be absolute chaos. But chaos is to be expected, but you want to condense it to as least as possible. I would say also that there will be some naysayers. I think CP, you mentioned that some people will be resistant, but part of the goal of introducing a new methodology or concept is to get those people on board with you. Find out how they can help you. Instead of having them be against you, bring them on. Have them be part of the team as well. I think it's like Cotter, you kind of build that guiding coalition. So you kind of bring them in and make them part of the team as well. That's just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of adds to that, right? Like sometimes you're going to need those folks who are going to keep you honest, right? A lot of times, because they're the ones who are coming in from a different lens. Again, of course, with positive intentions, where they maybe want to ask the whys. They want to understand, like, why are we going through this change? And if you're able to like effectively articulate what's going on, they may help you see a perspective that you may have not considered. And that is something I've just learned in my career, that hey, I can know the Scrum guide backwards and forwards, but if I can't get folks on board with this or help them understand like how it impacts them, but also at the same time, like if it's not 100% to the Scrum guide, but it's somewhere in the middle, that if it fits, it chips and it works for everybody that's on board, you know what? I'll take that as a win at the end of the day also.
Got to also zoom it out too and have an answer to the question, why are we even doing this? There's got to be some kind of, what's the catalyst for this? Why are you bringing this in? Not how does this affect me, but like, what's the reason? Change for change's sake. People talk about resistance. People talk about how do I motivate? How do I do this? It's like, you got to have the good answer. Why are we doing this again? That starting to think about having that earlier than later is normally something to consider.
All right, very good. I think that was a good responses. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the next question. Let me dig into the bowl here, the magic bowl. All right, let's pull out our next question here. Let's see. Ooh, this will be a fun one. In Agile, do you get rid of project management? Ooh, I'll repeat it one more time. In Agile, do you get rid of project management?
So I'm gonna go on a limb here and say, well, it's probably not really a limb. I don't think a lot of people probably will be aligned with this, but I'd love to hear other folks' perspectives, and that is, the answer is no, right? When we think about the manifesto, it says nothing about frameworks. It says nothing about roles. It doesn't say anything about those things. There are things that we value the things on the left more than we value the items on the right. But we don't completely toss the baby out with the bathwater. That's not what we do. because again, it goes back to my earlier answer. There are people that are involved in this. And if you came in like saying like, "Hey, we're gonna," you and Chris, again, pretty much every story is going to be about something that Chris told me. Is that?
Yeah, front row seat for something.
But it's like Chris does a training class, or if I do something internally within my organization, saying, "Hey, we're going to get rid of all the scrum masters, or we're going to get rid of all the product owners, or not product owners, but project managers. You're now going to be, Agilists." Like, people are going to look at you like in the face and be like, "Sure, okay, oh, sure, Jan, right?" Take it back to the Brady Bunch. But like, again, keep in mind that the manifesto doesn't talk about roles, doesn't talk about any of those things, and it is that we evaluate the things on the left more than we evaluate things right. Doesn't mean we don't necessarily do it at all, right? So to your question, do we get rid of project managers? No, I think if you're keeping in mind the values on the left versus the items on the right, I think you'll be in a good spot. But then again, that's just me. But hey, I'd love to hear other folks' thoughts on that.
Is that to me or is that
it could be to either one. Whoever's feeling frisky today.
I'm feeling frisky. So I agree that, no, you do not get rid of project management because they can live together, depending on the need. As an Agilist, you always want to kind of coach yourself out of the job. You want to train people up and you want to enable them to be able to carry on this new way of working or this new way of thinking about how they work and their processes and procedures. So project management does not get thrown out the window. You should be pairing up because they can help us and we can help them. My favorite analogy is we're a Dungeons and Dragons party. We have different strengths and weaknesses, but our ultimate goal is to get to the dungeon and save the princess or whatever. We're working together. So you probably don't want to throw away project managers, program managers, or anybody like that if you're trying to roll out agility or anything at any kind of business or corporation. And I'll pass it over to you, Chris.
2 parts on this one. Can you read the question one more time?
Yes, the question is.
I want everybody else to hear. I want everyone to hear it again first before I go.
In Agile, do you get rid of project management?
Consider the weight of some of those words. Get rid of. So it's like reading through that. I'm curious about a couple things. Number one, when you hear in Agile, what do you think in Agile is? Are you thinking it's some kind of like messed up version of Scrum, stand-ups and story points? Like, because that's why people always say the Agile Scrum drives me nuts. So what do you think that is? That's the first question I would ask the person. The second question I would say is, what's a project manager? Because a lot of the folks of my vintage grew up in traditional project and program management, myself included. And so it's, what do you think a project manager is? Likewise, what do you think agility is? Because the challenge, the way that that's framed, again, question answer's not, the person who asks the question's not here. But how often do people run into the place of, oh, I'm at job, and then someone comes in, Scrum Police comes in and says, nope, you got to go ahead and do this different. They do stand-ups and story points. You don't have a job, this. And then you start arguing about things, and you're not even talking about the same thing. So that's where I would start on what it is. Agility is a set of values and principles that guide how we make decisions, how we behave, what we embody as individuals, as teams, and as an organization. So what do you think it is? And then on the other side of the coin, what do you think a project manager is? Because we've seen all sorts of flavors from where it's like very heavy on account management. We've seen other things when it's more tool administration. We've seen other when it's squeezing utilization out the spreadsheet, whole bunch of things like that. So it's like, okay, you just put 2 things in that question. What are those 2 things? I would start the questions there to figure out, let's get on the same page about those things are before we even take a step. Most people would jump right on into that and say, you know what you should do? I'd be curious about what those things are from whoever asked the question.
That was a great point. And again, for the folks at home, the question was, in Agile, do you get rid of project management? And to your point, Chris, it's funny because I started as a project manager until I discovered Agile. And it's just funny how many Agilists are former like command and control project managers, and we can kind of see how they work together. But some people who just came like straight into the Agile world without any project management before, they can say, oh yeah, we don't need a project manager. We can handle this ourselves. And it's just like, well, there's a place for everyone, and it depends on like the project or program you're working with. Like you can never get rid of project management. In fact, I think PMI has morphed, Discipline Agile as part of their part of their programming for project management. So it's like project management and Agile are working together. One of the biggest, probably the biggest project management training institutes out there.
I know I'm probably going out of sync because I actually want to kind of follow up on something that you just said. So apologies if I'm going out of order.
Oh, go for it.
And that is, do you think, and this may be slightly controversial a little bit, but that's just me. Do you think that puts folks at a disadvantage where like they come in with that singular perspective of, I came in, I like, especially for my students who are graduating, right? And they took in that path of like going through project management and doing something to that extent. And then they come in as a scrum master or in most cases as a scrum master, or depending on how frisky they get on their resume, come in as an agile coach. Do you think that puts those folks sometimes at a disadvantage because they don't have that additional perspective? So then if they will probably are the ones who are coming out saying, do the agile scrum or something like that, or saying like, well, this is how I learned it here, because you don't necessarily have that additional perspective. Does that make sense, what I'm saying there?
Mm-hmm.
Let me know if it doesn't, if I need to rephrase that.
So my response to that would be, this is, in our roles, we'll just say we're Agilists, regardless if we started with project management or not, is that we must always be forever learners. So let's say in that situation, the Scrum Master just roll out a training. I got my CSM. Woo, I'm ready to go. They start working a program. They're like, oh, we don't need project management, but they learn about what project management is, how to run it, principles, values, and they go, oh, okay, well, this is how it pairs with Agile, and they see both sides of the coin, and they're able to use both. So to that, I would say, if they are willing and open to learning out more things other than just agility, then they're okay. However, if they're stubborn, like, oh, this is how I'm going to do things, ain't nothing going to change, then they're going to get stuck in that single thought process. But right. You must, I think on my LinkedIn, I have forever learner. I am always open to learning new things from different disciplines and processes and procedures. And that's how I think to be successful in this business, that's what you need to be, is just to be open and receptive to new things.
Sure. Like our whole growth mindset is important for having that.
And then Chris, to add, before Chris goes, I just want to add one more small thing.
Okay,
Just can't help it. He's risky. I can just hang out. Today. I'm just gonna sit here. I'm gonna sit here and look.
This is the make up for all the time that he decided he didn't want to hang out with me. So like, I gotta get.
He's like, I want to hang out.
I'll take again for another like 12 months. So I got to get it all in
there. So think about it like this: the retrospective prime directive. I'm probably gonna butcher it, but we did the best job of what we knew at the time. Blah 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 blah. So that's the same concept. What we know now, we did the best we could with the knowledge that we have. Yeah. So go out and get that additional knowledge so you can continue doing the best job you can. And now, sorry, Chris, I'll pass it back to you. I just had that little tidbit in my brain. I just wanted to get it out.
CPT it up for me again.
So the question is, for folks who have that singular perspective of coming in just as an Agilist or a Scrum Master or Agile coach, whatever it is, do you think that puts folks at a disadvantage when they step into a new role or a team and they're coming in and seen as a quote unquote, in some cases, a change agent for the organization, knowing that they only have that one perspective?
Two parts. Take whoever has the perspective thing where it's like you only have experience in one versus the other. The idea of always learning and being curious is a good thing. Regardless of the perspective you have, I think there's a couple things to consider with this. Perspective is always key. But imagine an organization that you're coming from one perspective and you're compensated at one level. And then suddenly the other perspective is coming in and you're compensated at a different level. And I'm not saying which is which. That says a lot about what that organization might think is important. And some of the overlying, what's the culture of how we look at things? Someone's got 15 years experience. They got 15 years experience. Oh, well, they're just X, Y, or Z, because I've seen both sides marginalized. So thinking about that, that's another little wrinkle I wanted to put into this. I would always rather give someone, anytime I get a chance to work with a student or someone comes to me for advice or in a coaching relationship, when it's, hey, I'm just open and I'm curious and I want to think about some things, that's good. If the wrinkle on that is a whole lot of confidence in one or both perspective, when really that underlying foundation is not there. Because if there's one thing the Agile community does not lack, is some very confident individuals.
Very true. I might
I
have
take
to quote
offense to that. I take offense to that, but it is cool.
that.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
We are definitely very confident people. I will definitely say that.
No, no.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go ahead and
Yeah.
reach in the bowl and go for our third question here. Let me move things around and not looking. Let's pull the next one out.
It's the $1.6 billion lottery ticket. I gotta
It was
go.
like, I
8-6.
was like, why am I doing this again? Okay, bye.
Got somewhere to be. Got some ice cream.
Oh my god! Why you're pulling questions? I know this is super random. I know we're just like spitballing here, but like I was checking out I was checking out travel site because the beauty of like where I get to work at.
You about to plug like some kind of like blue cheese card? What are you doing?
No.
You trying to set up a commercial?
I'm not trying to set a commercial, and that I'm just really just saying like if you had like a month like where you can just go visit like wherever, like where would that be? Like for me, I'm like somewhere like I would never in a million years dream of like I was like St. Bart's for a month would be pretty solid. I have no clue what the heck St. Bart's even is. I just heard rappers talk about it, so like you know what? Let's check it out. Sure, absolutely.
Let's go there.
Let's go there.
Just cause, yeah.
Let's just go there.
That's good. That's
So,
good.
yeah.
All right, you got another one?
Yes, and
All right.
this is another fun one. How do you prevent burnout when working in an agile fashion? I'll repeat that one more time. How do you prevent burnout when working in an agile fashion?
Take out the in an agile fashion. How do you prevent burnout when working? Stop. The whole again back to the whole thing. If you can tell what I ate for breakfast today, values and principles. It's all about working in a sustainable pace, folks. So it's like if you're burning yourself out, take the word agile off of it and be like, one, it's like what do you think it really is? But a lot of it comes down to boundary setting and time management. How am I burning out with? It's like again, well, what is someone asking you to do? Do you have a shared understanding what this thing is? Too many people just want to jump into the agile scrum. Sorry, I'm salty about that. But it's how do you prevent yourself burning out from working? Stop. Well, how would you anyway? Well, making time for yourself, self-care, etc. And it's interesting how many people say I don't have time. It's like, no, it's probably just a prioritization standpoint. You say yes to everything, you know exactly what's going to happen. So it's, but exhaustion, a friend of mine and I have a lot of talks about this, and I share their views as well. Exhaustion is not a badge you should wear proudly. I'm more impressed by somebody who can actually take care of themselves and, get 3 square in and do a little bit of stretching and walking. And, you're no good if you're laid up. I mean, if you don't take a sick day for yourself once in a while, your body's going to pick it for you. So it's like, don't wring that dish rag too tight. Like take care of yourself. That's what I think.
That's fair.
Go
ahead.
I'll just say, yes, I agree with that 100. And I actually was having this conversation recently. Someone on my team was taking TPO and I was telling them, they're like, well, I have all these things going on. It's like, look, PTO is for you to take. Enjoy your time off, recharge, spend time with family, whatever else you got to do. The work is not going to, it'll still, I hate to say it, but it's not going anywhere. Right. And the way I explain it to people is that in our line of business, nobody is going to die if you don't work with someone, don't work with the team, don't get a task done. We're not in that business. We're not like working for a DoD top secret, something where if we don't get things done, those people can't do their mission, blah, 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 blah. So it's like, number one, do that. But number two, your mental health, and especially now in today's time, mental health is so very important because mental health leads to breakdowns in family health, in physical health, in your work health. Because if you lose your mental health, everything else goes to shit. And that's just my honest opinion. So take a break when needed. Don't, I was up to like 9 o'clock coding. Like I've seen developers, like if you're using any, we'll say Jira or anything else, GitHub, where you see someone commit something or update something like 2-3 in the morning. I'm like, what are you doing? Go to sleep. Like, I did my best coding at night, but you're up all day. You need to have that work-life balance. You need to separate it and not push yourself. I had to get this done. Well, be realistic with your timelines. One of the programs I'm working with is I was helping them think about how to realistically estimate the work. Instead of trying to get everything done in 8 weeks, be realistic. There's PTO, you need buffer. There's like there's like more testing you need to do. There's more integration testing. Put that in. And what they did was they added more time. People are like, whoa, I thought you can get this done in 8 weeks. Well, we did some trending analysis and we realized we commit to 8 weeks, but in reality, it's like 10, 12, 13. And then we're doing hero work where people are working weekends, working nights, trying to meet this deadline. It's like, no, be realistic about, estimation of time, but take care of your mental health and keep it separated. And when you have PTO, take your PTO. Don't burn yourself out because they will replace you.
Yeah, that definitely will. I actually posted about this same exact question because I was literally in that same exact scenario not even 3 weeks ago where everything seemed to snowball at the exact moment, from work, from outside life to just everything, the stuff that just I don't control, right? And so what I learned, this is a really good sense that a lot of people have shared with me, is that no is a complete sentence. It's okay to say no, right? It's okay to be like, hey, I just don't have the bandwidth, I don't have the scope. You can fancyfy it up however you want to do it. But sometimes just no is a complete sentence. Of course, you may want to add some context after the fact, right? But that's okay. Like, don't feel the need to continue to push to where your entire life is kind of feels like it's crumbling apart because you're no good for anybody, right? And something I've learned in the fire service that I translate into my everyday work is that if I don't take care of myself, I can't take care of anybody else. If I run into a burning building and I don't have my air pack on, how am I going to go save grandma from the top floor of the steps? It absolutely defeats the purpose, and I do nobody any good. And then other people are then having to bail me out, which puts them at risk for some unnecessary reason, right? So when it comes to those types of situations, be okay with saying like, hey, I just don't have it, because if something happens, especially in your workplace, if something happens to you, that means somebody else has to pick it up. That may put a detriment or an extra stressor that that person on your team wasn't necessarily expecting, and also put your team and folks at risk too. So I will keep doing this, and I apologize in advance. I actually have a follow up on that.
Can I stay on?
Yeah,
it
go for it.
Before you
Go for it.
Because you like following up and following up. One thing this recalls a conversation I had recently with someone where talking about a whole lot of work to do and all. And the thing that I was curious about was what happens if it doesn't get done? Like this, whatever the thing is, what happens if it doesn't? Like, no, realistically, actually thinking about what happens if it doesn't get done, it's an interesting place to talk about. The other thing to think about is, say you do get it done, say you do, cool. How do you determine what you're going to work on next? And those two questions spurn some very interesting conversations. So exploring those things about, okay, what happens if this doesn't get done? Not doesn't get done now, but like what happens if it doesn't? Like what happens if the ends break? Whatever it is, I don't load the dishwasher, whatever it is. And also, how do you figure out what you're doing next? Interesting conversations. I'm not going to divulge what came of it, but it was just some very interesting conversation. CP, go ahead and add on.
Kind of like saying
you're going to add on.
Yeah, kind of saying on, and also keep me honest here. If I keep following up too much, please just tell me CP shut up. That would be greatly appreciated. Because I have a tendency.
Well, it depends on how many questions he wants to get through. Because if every one is going to be 3 years,
this is great. This is great conversation.
All
right.
Kind of like looking at it from a different perspective. Feeling that you have the weight of the world on your shoulders because they're saying yes to the culture, because there are not that many opportunities that come from Agilists of color, right? Or just Agilists of any particular background. How do you learn to say no, knowing that if you say no, they may not go to another person that looks like you, or they may not be able to like go to like somebody else. Like I try this CP dude out, and like he pushed me to the side and said nah, and that may necessarily be a detriment for somebody else, because if I don't make that connection, I then can't refer Omar to the next opportunity with these people, with that particular person, with that organization. Like, how do you like learn how to balance the saying no, knowing that it may impact other people who you're trying to support and trying to like bring them up also through the community too?
Perception.
Yeah.
That is so if you say no, it's not just no and just walk away. It's like, no, but here's why, and here's an alternative. So for example, If like, hey, we need you to do this, you can say, no, my plate is full. However, I can sit down and have you talk to Chris or CP. They can assist you as well. I want to make sure that we help you get this done. It's just I am tapped out, and you can say I have all these other things that's already prioritized. I can't add anything else to my plate, but let me help you find someone else who can get you there. Or you can say, hey, I'm unavailable for the next 2 days. Can this wait until I return? If so, I'm more than happy to help you. If not, I can refer you to one of my compadres, and they can take care of you.
That's a well, pull up while you're coming up yourself. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll stop talking because make sure we get some more questions.
Communicating.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Communicating what you're doing and your current priorities is also the other thing to think about it, because no one ever asks anybody to say no. In these scenarios y'all are putting out, it's like, oh, hey, there's a request. Hey, can you? Well, it's like, okay, again, how's the organization work? Can anyone just tap anybody to do anything they want? And is this cool? Is this how it is? Like, I don't know. So if you work in one of those places that thinks it's okay to tap whoever you want on the shoulder and, hey, can you do this? Have you had a conversation about asking for other people's time? And nobody I work with likes to say no. Everybody wants to try to generally, help people out. But it's like, hey, can you do this? It's different. Say, well, this is what I'm jamming on right now. Oh, well, okay, well, is that the person that can actually add to your list? Everyone can add to my list. Well, you probably need to have a conversation, because it's probably one person you need to make happy, not 15. So thinking about how can you communicate your current priorities out there might help steer those conversations in a slightly more productive way, as opposed to telling somebody no.
And I will yes and that. That reminds me of the Phoenix Project, and I think that person was Brent, who said yes to everything and blew up everything. It never works. You definitely need that intake process. So that is a great point where if you're trying to prevent burnout and you want to say yes to everyone, but you should be saying no, what is that intake process? I've worked with teams before where they got requests in Slack, through emails, through like their ticketing system. And I explained you need a single intake process where everything is funneled into one place, and you're not getting hit from 50 different directions, and you're being tasked by like, oh, this manager over here, or this leader over here, or this other team. Like, you can say, I want to help you, but please follow our intake process so it can be prioritized and given to the right person to help. Because I'm one person on a team. There's a whole bunch of us. Yes, you may request me, but you may not get me right this minute. You might get me as soon as I'm done with the other things that are of a different priority. So, Chris, that is an awesome point, and that's a great one about pointing to that intake process. All right. Who's ready for the next question? All right, let's dig in. We might have time for one or two more. So let's grab the next one. Oops, grab two. Let's see. Ooh, interesting.
He says that for every single one of them.
Well, there are some great questions that people have asked. So here we go. How do you balance what you're measuring to ensure you're focusing on benefits of the system and not just one of its parts? So I'll read that one more time. How do you balance what you're measuring to ensure you're focusing on benefits of the system and not just one of its parts? Let you noodle on that for a second.
That's a good question. I'd love to hear y'all's two perspectives, because I think this is something that I'm experiencing right now. So this is maybe me getting a little bit of advice. So I would love to hear what you two all have.
Omar, do you want to go first?
I'll let you go first, because I think CP and I have gone first on every other question.
Anytime the word measurement comes up, my ears always perk up a little bit, because when people want to talk about measurement, numbers, metrics, all that, I'm always interested in, cool, let's say you're trying to measure everything. All right. Or you can measure everything you want. All right, cool. What are you going to do with it? Like, what decision you going to make with the thing that you're looking for? Or like, what problem are you trying to solve if you had that thing? Because people are like, how do I, and it's always that, What problem you trying to solve, what decision you trying to make. You're trying to make a decision, or you're trying to figure out what to do. And if it's really just, I just need to know, it's like, okay, calm down. There's a lot of stuff out there about metrics, and this is not what I'm getting into here at all. What I'm getting into is a little bit more philosophical from the standpoint of powerful quote that sat with me from the documentary. Paraphrasing it is, if you can't count what's important, what you can count becomes important. It's the only thing that's important, and that's going to cause people to change their behavior. And that's the dangerous thing to stay away from. So when people are like, how do I count? It's like, calm down. Because it's like, what problem you trying to solve? What question you trying to answer? What decision you trying to make? And, somebody needs to know something. It's like, okay, calm down. So I would say for those of you who are like, how do I measure? It's like, what are you trying to find out? Those are the questions come up. Like, I need to know who's not pulling their weight. Oh, I just need to make sure we're on track. Oh, I need to make sure the line's moving. It's like, okay, back to those values and principles, folks. The way you work, is it just under the hood, down to the studs? Are you operating on a value system that's in conflict with what you think you're trying to do? I'm gonna leave it at that. CP,
that is ahead. Good. Like, I don't know if I would have anything that's as powerful as that. So I was like, that's really good. I think based off the question that you have, like, I immediately start just thinking about like systems thinking, and I'm looking to understand the entire situation or the entire issue or the thing that you're trying to resolve. And it's actually something not from Chris, but actually from one of our colleagues, Mike Carey, who did a talk here recently about like,
shout out to
Mike about like understanding like what is the behaviors you're trying to drive based off of what you're measuring. And that talk was actually really, really, really freaking powerful, because it helped put things in perspective for me. And we talk about metrics, especially for all of your teams, because again, this is something I'm going through right now. So Chris, thank you for your insight. And that is when people start to ask like, hey, what's the progress and how are we doing, and what are the metrics and what's the data and what are all the things that I need to know? Firstly, can you even digest most of the information? Because especially as an executive or as a VP or anybody at that level, do you really care in a particular situation whether this velocity number ticked down X number percent? You do not care. What you do care about? Hey, is this thing going to get out the door? Or are we making progress? And you know how you do that?
Yeah.
Work in software. It's so wild how people completely forget about that.
Do so.
It's crazy. Like, if you show it like, hey, I may not have any metrics or data for you, but like, oh, check this out. You know that thing that it's supposed to do? Click this button, and it does it. Boom. And they're like, fantastic. And that, in most cases, that's all you need to know. I think a lot of people not necessarily neglect, but they just kind of get past that because they're so caught in that old school project management style of getting things done. So
take it easy.
That's it. I'm done. That's it.
So I'm going to repeat the question one more time before I give my 2 cents. But how do you balance what you're measuring to ensure you're focusing on benefits of the system and not just one of its parts? When I read this, 2 things come to mind. First is, one, have you established your baseline? Because if some people are like, where does this start measuring? Okay, but where did you start? How can you measure where you want to go or how you want to get to that next place without setting that baseline? So that's one of the first things. Have you established that baseline? And the second part that I always get scared of, and then you just brought it up, is that when you use metrics and measures to punish people, I don't know why I went straight negative. I think time I spent previously with, I'll just say, we'll say federal agencies, it's just like they punish people for, oh, you didn't complete your this team only finished X amount of points, or we didn't, the entire train didn't get all this out the door. I'm like, but they got so much done. The outcomes, not outputs, outcomes is what's important here. And I just worry, I'm fearful of organizations that use metrics and measurements to punish you. On the flip side, I'm also wary about, let's say a contractor, like, oh, we have to complete so many points so we get our bonus for the month. And then they fluff their numbers and you don't see the truth. Measurement to me, it's like a double-edged sword for me, where yes, we want to measure, but at the same time, is somebody gaming the system on one side or the other to make sure that they look good? So that's just something that comes to mind. But yeah, you want to keep that balance, like the question was asking, just to make sure you're getting benefits from the whole system versus just one of its parts. And that's just what came to my mind when I saw this question here. All right, perfect.
Cool.
I think we have time for one more question. All right, let's
Let's do one
dig
more.
into the bowl here. Oops, one fell on the floor.
If it's short, we can do two.
If it's short,
We'll
we can
do
do two.
lightning round here.
Lightning round. Here we go. Oh, it's
How do I? How do I? Does it start with how do I?
no, but it's interesting. It's actually I'm going to skip this question because it's basically the same thing. Well, not the same thing, but the same thing about measurements. Oh, you know what? Well, let's talk about it. What are you doing
Okay.
to avoid your measurements being gamed? What are you doing to avoid your measurements being gamed? I think the person who put this probably might be in a situation where he either he has they may have a suspicion that they're being taken advantage of.
Or they're put in a position where somebody else is gaming the system to make them look bad. Could come all
Yeah.
over. There's like 15 perspectives in this one. How do you know it's not being gamed? Well, is that the question? How do you know it's not being gamed?
Yeah, it's what are you doing to avoid your measurements being gamed?
Well, so putting it full on literal, it's like we don't do that. But it's like if to reframe it, how can you put some conversations or something around to reduce the amount of that? For me, okay, how are these things used? And also for all the people around, what does success look like for them? That's the big thing what I'd look for. You get into a place, hey, if you're listening right now and you're in points for developer world, or if you're in that, hey, I want to send you a virtual like blankets and cocoa, because there's far too much bad heat about this stuff. My former students know that I throw over 100 on this topic. And by the way, a present's going to be dropping here on the internet here in a little while. And yes, I am in the studio recording it. For those of you who've seen the bit is coming and you get to with all the jokes. So that's coming. But bringing it back to how are these things used? That basically following that trail will give you an idea about if things are being gamed or not. Because every single thing can be gamed. Everything. I mean, like think about like, I don't have children, like cars and cats, but like my niece and my nephew, it's like, oh, imagine if your allowance goes up $1 for every chore you do. And then he goes, well, I moved this toy and that's one chore. And I moved this toy and that's another chore. And it paid me $300, Uncle Chris. It's like, take it easy, boy. so thinking about like that, I would say, think about how it's all used. That might give you an idea about like how stuff's being gamed. Yeah. Just a little nugget on that one because it's kind of lightning.
Yeah, there's a lot there, and again, I won't put it as eloquently as Chris did, but that kind of just goes back to my earlier answer. I'm just going to cheap out and say, like, working software, man, it's the best mode of measurement, right? Like, if you're setting your goals, your expectations, and whatever your expected outcomes are, and if you can measure that by looking at the software development, not just software, right? Because agility can be done in any type of scenario, right? If you're looking at, hey, whatever your end product is, what that outcome is versus your outputs, as Omar said, you're going to be in a good spot regardless of what's happening, what's going on. So.
And it's funny because I was actually in a similar situation to this. Geez, like 12 years ago. This is when I was pre project management, beginning of project management, pre Agile world. I was a help desk manager, and I flipped from contractor to Fed like during that time. And as a contractor, I was kind of taught how to game the system for the ticketing system. Like, for example, we had a help desk ticket. There's the you have your response time versus your closure time, and like it was like if we had a Sev 1 issue, we had 30 minutes to respond, hour and a half to fix it. But if it turns out I had to replace the laptop, that changed the category. That changes response time to 2 hours and overall to 8. So there are ways to game the system, kind of, Chris, like you said, with your niece and nephew, like I moved the chore. That was something similar. When I switched to the federal side, it was my job to watch that, to prevent that, to call our contractors out and say, no, your team changed the SLA on there. So no, you failed this issue. So I see that. So I would say to this question, what are you doing to avoid your measurements? If you could find someone who knows the other side of the coin, speak to them, talk to them, have them look at your situation. If they're on your team, even better, they can partner with you to kind of see if they can kind of like look at how you're processing things and how things are being measured, if they're being gamed, because sometimes you're not an expert. Heck, I'm not an expert on, we work with technical teams. You ask me to write code, I can probably do a then if statement, but other than that, good luck. But yeah, find someone who can help you look at that if you're unsure. Just get it. Sometimes a second pair of eyes is good.
Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Do you really need to call in legal in the red pen?
That's a good question. Yeah, especially if there's, again, leaning on my federal experience.
What you're trying to do. What does success look like?
Yeah.
If everyone's operating from a place of bad faith and no one trusts nobody, and you calling in legal, okay, what are we? Let's be real honest. What are we really dealing with?
That is a true statement.
You want to sneak one more in?
All right, we have a. Let's sneak one more in. Let's sneak one more in. All right.
Try to keep this one short here.
One more. Look at it. If it's anything like anything we've seen, throw it out. Give us a new. It's fresh and short. Here we go.
Nope.
I love that face. You're like,
nope. We need something short and sweet. Let me see.
Here's a wonderful corn souffle with a basil.
What are you like?
Ice lemon.
What is this? NPR? This is an NPR episode? This is an NPR podcast?
I get. And now,
all right, I gotta find a short one.
I could put easy.
Hey, there, I see you.
Here we go. Here's a fast one.
Okay.
CP goes first.
What is the worst? Here we go. What is the worst anti-pattern you've seen on an Agile team?
Ooh, okay. Unwillingness to be transparent with each other and say, hey, I just don't know or I need help. That is huge for teams and something that, because of the culture and the environment that they have probably been brought into or brought up in, or they have been exposed to within their time here, can be challenging. And a lot of times it is, pull something from Chris too here, a lot of unlearning that needs to get done for them to understand that it's okay to ask for help, and this is an environment for them to be transparent with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see that one more time, Omar? I want to make sure I answer.
What is the worst anti-pattern you've seen on an Agile team?
Seen a lot, and they're all bad. Here's just an overarching one. I'd say that would really be up there. You ever bought a ticket to a concert, or like on an airplane or something like that, or like you go to a ball game, something like that? You will see a thing called confidence. And true confidence is when you are sitting in a seat and someone thinks that you are sitting in their seat, and they get like a foot taller. You know, I think you're sitting in my seat. You ever get that? That type of confidence, when someone does not have a ticket stub, when I see high levels of confidence with a lack of shared understanding on whatever the thing is. That's what I would say, because I see that a lot. Like, oh, it's this. Oh, well, I think it's this. They both off the. You're both sitting in the wrong section.
I will say the worst anti-pattern, kind of similar to what CP said, is the lack of trust and transparency within a team. Like I'm all about team building, kumbaya, like we're working together, because it's like the military. If you want to take that hill, you want to trust that person next to you. For some teams, they go through that the forming, storming, norming, performing, adjoining process, and sometimes that storming phase is just really bad. They don't trust each other. There's no safety or anything. So that I worked with a team where at a stand-up, a fist fight almost broke out. I'm like, what is going on here? There was no trust. There was no faith within each other. And then I had to work really hard to kind of build that. We did a lot of team building events, a lot of like transparent, empathetic conversations so that they would understand. And lo and behold, it was a cultural difference that once discovered, we were best friends again. So
see, and this is one thing. Sorry,
go ahead.
To jump in, but one thing, the way I like to think about things is that some of the things that we're kicking around here, I wouldn't actually call anti-patterns the way I define it. I talk about anti-patterns normally as a response to something that seems like a good idea on the surface, and really it's a bad idea. Like when people say best practices, think of these as worst practices, things you shouldn't do. What we're talking about here gets a little even deeper, a little bit more, unhealthy interpersonal behaviors, which is what I like to call dysfunctions, which is different than bad scrum, folks. So just I want to
That
make
is
clear
true.
where I'm coming from
Yeah.
from this stuff. When I hear anti-pattern, it's like, oh, if this, I should do this. Where it's kind of like, oh, well, we start our meetings 10 minutes late after the start time because everyone's late to every meeting. Where it's like, really, okay, you think it's a good idea, but why is everyone 10 minutes? You know? So I just want to get that out because like I got
To that point, I've worked with several teams where they're like, we don't do retrospectives, we don't need it, we're already doing well. You're like, oh no.
Yeah, it's going with that definition, Chris, real quick, and that is, oh, we'll just carry our stories over every sprint anyway, so it doesn't matter. We'll just carry it over just because, and
we do this. Yep. Here's something that we do, and it's like it sounds like a good idea when really it could be a little bit more harmful, dangerous, counterproductive. That's the way I like to think about it.
All right, perfect. Well, that wraps up. We actually got 6 questions done. Wow, that is a first. Let's see if maybe the next show how many we get. But CP, Chris, thank you so much for joining us today on Agile Table Topics. Really enjoyed having both of you here. And CP, yes, we will hang out soon. Folks, we actually live in the same town, but because
like 10 minutes from each other, it's cool though. Yeah. It's cool. Like 10 minutes from each other.
I told them both that. I was like, hey, do you know? I mean,
it's mainly my fault. Just craziness, kids, work, COVID, all that other stuff. But
it happens.
You had no furniture.
Yes, I had no furniture for a few weeks.
This is, I mean, you got to do
that. Sounds about right. Sounds about right for the beach. Yeah.
Horrors for moving. The horrors of moving companies.
Yep. And then CP was literally off his feet for a few months. So we will get together soon.
I was like,
wow, just call me out then. Yes, I broke my head. Yes.
All right. Thank you both so much. Sure. And just real quick, where can people follow you? Let's go. I'll make sure we post the social links below, but where can people follow you?
Yes, you can go to LinkedIn, look up CP Richardson. I am right there wearing the same hat, different color glasses. You can also, most importantly, go check out agileandcolor.org. You can go to Agile and Color on Twitter, Agile and Color on Instagram, Agile and Color on LinkedIn. Please give us a follow. If you're interested in volunteering, please, there's links for you to sign up to get involved and to help out. Or if you need assistance, there are links for you to get involved and get assistance also. So check it out. We are there to help you and be able to support you.
So you can go to sparkplugagility.com. That's a way to get in touch with our organization and our team to see kind of all the great stuff that we do. You can find me pretty easily out on LinkedIn. Look for Chris Lee. Last name is 2 letters, L-I. There might be a lot of them out there. There's only one real one. So you can find me. I'm out on Twitter also. Easy to find me there. And I'm at a bunch of different meetups and things, be it virtually, be it, in person. Just tap me on the shoulder and say hi. And for all you aspiring educators out there, if you needed someone to talk to, by all means, if you're building like 30-minute workshops to multi-year curriculum, that's kind of what has the wind in my sails right now. That's where I'm spending a lot of my time and my thought. So feel free to reach out, folks. Love to meet new people.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. And folks, we'll see you at the next session. Have a good one. Thank you.